Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar. It's so great to have you all with us. Just a few housekeeping items before we get into introductions. So first, the webinar is being recorded, so if you do have to drop off at any point, you will get the full session in your inbox likely tomorrow or Monday. Beyond that, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can feel free to kind of put them in the questions section that you'll see somewhere on your GoToWebinar control panel. And we'll do our best to answer those as we kind of go through the content today. We will have a formal Q&A period at the end of the webinar. So if we don't get to your question right away, just be patient with us and we'll do our best to answer all of them. And with that, I'm going to just introduce our panelists here. So I'll start with myself. I'm the host for today. My name's Elish McCann and I lead content and SEO here at Method. If you're not familiar with Method, we're best known for being an automation tool for growing small businesses. So traditionally we've been in the QuickBooks space, but we have just launched our new Xero integration, which Mamoon and his team have built. So he's going to talk a bit about that with you guys in a bit. But for now, I'm going to pass it over to Martin to tell you a little bit about himself as well as about Amica.
Hey guys, great to be here. My name is Martin Chi. I'm a CPA, but also the CFO and co-founder of Amica. We specialize in accounting and finance integrations and business automations. So we build the connections between these systems that enable business owners to save time and hopefully save a bit of money in the process, but also to enrich the data that they have in their accounting packages and hopefully make better business decisions.
That's great. Thanks, Martin. And with that, I'll pass it over to Mamoon.
Hey, I'm Mamoon. I'm a product manager here at Method. I'm the product manager for the data and sync team. So essentially, I'm in charge of our integrations and our sync with QuickBooks and now Xero as well. I started off my journey at Method as a consultant. So I was working with small and medium-sized businesses, kind of helping them configure and customize workflows to help suit their business needs. From there, I worked into development. I moved into development kind of behind the scenes, working on making it a better platform overall. And now I'm the product manager, just trying to make sure that Method reaches all of the customers that it needs in an effective way, and we build out products and features that are most beneficial to you guys.
Great, thanks Mamoon. And before we dive into today's content, as well as some polls that we do have prepared for you, I'd love to hear a bit from our audience about where in the world all of you are joining from. For me and Mamoon, we're joining from Toronto right now, and then Martin, I think, is on the lovely Gold Coast over in Australia, so very jealous of that as we come into fall here in North America. So feel free to chat us where you're joining from. Oh, someone from Italy, that's awesome. I see some Florida, that's great. New York, some Vancouver, awesome, love to see it. Boston, that's awesome. All right, and with that, I think we are going to jump into our first poll. So again, if you are here for CPE credit and you signed up through their link, please make sure you participate in all of the polls today to make sure you get that credit. Great. Okay, so we're going to launch that. So our first poll that we have today is around any processes that you've already automated. So we have a few options here, and you can select as many as apply to you. So the first one here is customer payments. Second one is billing and invoicing. Third is signature collection and approvals. Fourth is any kind of customer service workflows. And fifth, we have sales commission tracking as well as payouts. So I'm going to leave this poll open for just a few more seconds so everyone can get their responses in. Then we'll share the results and we'll have a little discussion from there. We'll kind of tailor today's webinar content to some of the results from this poll because I know Martin and Mamoon have a lot of great automations to share with you guys today. So with that, we're just going to keep it open for another few seconds here, and then we will share the results. All right, so if you haven't got your vote in, I'm going to be closing it very shortly, so please make sure to do so. All right, with that, I'm going to close the poll. We'll share the results for you guys. Okay, so kind of a mixed bag here. So I see a lot of you guys have automated your customer payments, which is awesome, as well as billing and invoicing. So those are really important key workflows. not as many of you guys have taken automation for signature collection or approvals, customer service, or sales commission tracking. So we'll get into some workflows that might help you automate those last three. So yeah, that's great. All right, we'll get back to our slides then. So my first question is going to be for Martin. What can you tell me about kind of our first must-have automation for Xero users today?
Yeah, so definitely, I think one of the must-have integrations for most small businesses is an integration between their point of sale system or their e-commerce system. The reason for this is that typically these systems are high volume in nature, and in the accounting world and the bookkeeping world, we love to make sort of repeat and repetitive tasks a little bit more efficient and less error prone. So basically, what these integrations will do is they'll sync sales and payments transactions from these systems directly into Xero. So at Amica, we've got a lot of integrations in this space, but our top ones definitely include Square and Shopify. So they're quite large e-commerce and point of sale providers. And these integrations ensure that all of the relevant transactions are synced correctly into your GL accounts. So all of the relevant transaction components, such as the sales, the discounts, the refunds, returns, taxes, processing fees, all of these sorts of things, the integration will capture all of them and make sure that they're represented in your accounting package correctly. The obvious benefit, as I mentioned, is that you're saving a lot of time, not having to manually bring this information across, which, depending on the system, sometimes that can be quite complex and mostly always time consuming. Again, also you want to avoid manually entering data where you can, because typically these high volume manual repetitive tasks can be prone to error. And with Amica's integrations, we leverage off of the Xero bank feed functionality as well. So what that means is that insofar as you need to reconcile this data, so when Square or Shopify might be settling their deposits into your bank account, we've made this very simple so that essentially all the user has to do is click the OK button, which is really nice. One thing to note, and one thing which is really important when looking at e-commerce and point of sale integrations, is that you're able to map things the way that you like. So one of the things that we considered when we were building these products is that typically users work quite closely with their bookkeepers and accountants to make sure that things are set up in a way that really is providing the most value to the business and is an efficient solution for the business. So we really wanted to appreciate that. So if users have a particular setup insofar as their chart of accounts is concerned, this might look something along the lines of having already set up specific revenue accounts to deal with different revenue lines, different revenue accounts to deal with different product categories. It could be a whole suite of things. So we really accommodate that and allow for users to make sure that they're able to map things the way that they need to and the way that they would like to. On the flip side of that, we also make it very easy for users to set things up if they're just looking for something which is a bit more simple and light touch. So there is a version of all setups that we allow, which is called an express setup. Essentially, we make all of the decisions, or as many of the decisions as possible on the user's behalf, so that they can set up an integration that is functioning and working accurately with a few clicks. And literally it will take a few minutes to set up an integration between Square and Xero or Shopify and Xero. And I think that's a really important thing for a lot of users. They don't necessarily need something super deep. They just want to make sure the connection's happening, all the sales, all the payments, all the taxes are being accounted for, and it's being done in a very, very simple manner. Two other things that I should quickly mention. We do offer a sync of up to 12 months of historical data. So a lot of the times with accounting, when you're switching systems or you might be activating integrations, it can be a bit difficult when you've got a cutoff period which might not be consistent with, say, the end of financial year or a particular reporting period. So whenever you want to start the sync, we can go back up to 12 months to make sure that everything is consistent from that point on. And with any integration as well, and this definitely applies for all Amica integrations, it's really important to assess what support you have available. A lot of the times with integrations, people treat these as products, and they kind of treat it as a set and forget thing, but businesses change. Sometimes configuration settings need to change. Sometimes you might just need assistance in making sure that you've set things up to make sure you're getting the maximum value out of the integration. And we have a great support team that are all Xero certified. Some of them are CPAs as well, that can really help you to set these things up in the correct manner. And the last thing I should mention, a lot of these integrations that we have, they're free. So we do have free pricing models, and then if you want anything more advanced, more customized, or if you have many businesses or integrations that you'd like to activate, we then have tiered pricing plans starting at $12.99 a month or $17.99 a month if you're paying on a month-to-month basis.
Great, thanks, Martin. That 12-month kind of retrospective feature is really cool. So thanks for sharing. So I know Martin has kind of touched a little bit on the value of a Xero sync, but I'm really curious to hear from our audience today. So with that, we're going to launch our second poll. So for this poll, you can only select one option, so just think about where you best fall out of the three. So the question that we're asking you all today is, how important is a Xero sync when you evaluate new apps? So we've got three options, pretty simple here. Very important, somewhat important, or not at all important. Again, no wrong answer, so feel free to answer honestly. And again, if you are collecting CPE credit for the webinar today and you registered via the CPA Academy link, make sure to participate in all the polls, just so getting your credit is seamless and easy. And with that, I see that most of you guys have voted, but I'm going to leave the poll open just for a couple more seconds here for any stragglers that are maybe still deciding between the options. So. All right, last couple seconds here. Please get your responses in. And with that, we're going to be closing the poll. So I'll share those results with you all. All right, so kind of a mixed bag here. So some of you guys really invested in the Xero sync. That's great to see. The majority here, somewhat important, and then about a third of you not viewing it as a very important kind of must-have on your list. So thanks again for participating there. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Mamoon. So I know you have some thoughts on the value of a deep sync with Xero. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm hoping I can change some minds with this one. But there are a few benefits I want to talk about in terms of what a deep integration with Xero or your accounting software can do for you in terms of leveraging other systems. So first of all, I want to talk about giving full context of a sales cycle. So your accounting software is going to be really good for when you've actually made a sale. So you're going to have access to information like your invoices and your payments. But as any business owner knows, there's a lot more that goes into eventually making that sale. And this is where something like a CRM really comes into play, and it's really powerful. You really get to understand from lead or prospective customer to customer what took place and allowed you to eventually make the sale. So for example, a person comes in as a lead, you are able to track what the lead source is. And from there, you are able to track kind of the interactions you've had with this person, what kind of conversations you had, what the nature of those interactions was, and how many interactions you had to have before eventually making that sale. Outside of that, you kind of get to use things like method opportunities, which is a way of kind of leveraging a large sales cycle before a sale actually happens to understand what's going to happen in the future. So you can use that for things like forecasting and reporting capabilities. And this becomes really important to understand beginning from lead to end what happened for two reasons. One, you can use this when you re-enter the sales cycle with a customer. So for example, you've made the sale with a customer. If you only have access to the accounting information, there's very limited things you can do. There's not really a lot of actionable insights there. What you can do if you have a CRM and you have access to things like activities or interactions that you've had with them is that you can see what you've done with them in the past, what sort of reservations they had, what it took to get the sale, done with this person, and now you're not like rehashing old conversations or kind of bringing back old points. This is especially important if a lot of those interactions potentially happen with a different person. So you get to leverage all of the information that your team has in one accessible place. The second thing is, as your business grows, a lot of these customers and as your clientele base grows, a lot of this is going to turn into patterns that you can use for actionable insights. So you're going to see, for example, that a lot of lead sources are coming in through a specific pathway. So what a lot of businesses will do, they'll see, a lot of my lead sources are coming in through a webinar, they're coming in through a trade show. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to put more resources or more effort into those areas so I can get more leads that turn into paying customers. And on the flip side, maybe you're seeing that a certain lead source is not generating a lot of revenue, or there's not a lot of action. This could kind of give you like an indication, allow you to be like more data driven, understand maybe this is not worth, the benefit is not worth the cost in this scenario. So that would be the first kind of example that I have, that it's giving you full context beginning to end of how a sale happened, and you get the full context to kind of continue making those sales. The second thing is you're reducing double data entry. So for your team, a lot of this information that exists within your accounting software is going to be important to them, but they don't necessarily have access to that accounting software. The fact that it syncs over means that you're not manually entering in the same information multiple times in different places. Like Martin mentioned previously, again, very error prone, a lot of manual work that's unnecessary. And again, manual work will always be error prone. And outside of that, there's a lot of data and security and integrity benefits with this. So, for example, if someone in your sales software needs access to an invoice, or they need to look at an invoice to follow up with a customer or talk to a customer, you're not kind of doing this over email, and there's not a lot of back and forth between the teams. The one person has access to all of that information in one place. And the final thing I want to kind of talk about that I touched on briefly in the point before was just that teams are no longer siloed. So just the nature of the way software works is that there's always going to be a certain software that does certain parts of a process much better, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to keep all of your teams siloed so that the sales people only have access to the sales information, or the accountant people have only access to the accounting information. You want to make sure that your team is working cohesively and they have all of the information that they need at their fingertips to be able to offer the best experience, to offer the most personalized experience for your customers.
Great, thanks Mamoon. Hopefully Mamoon has changed some of your minds on the value of a Xero sync. With that though, we are going to get into our third poll today. So just gonna launch that. All right, so I know pretty much all of you on the webinar today are going to be Xero users, but we are really curious what other kind of software, what other kind of tools you're using to power your business. So we've got a few kind of small business favorites here. So Gmail, we use that at Method. We love G Suite in general. Outlook, Google Calendar as well, MailChimp, as well as Zapier. So for this one, you can select as many kind of options that apply to you. So don't hold back. Yeah, and I'll leave this open for just a few more seconds. Again, if you are looking for a CPE credit and came through the CPA Academy registration page, make sure you participate in all of the polls. And if you're looking at this poll and maybe there's some tools that are really important to your day-to-day operations at your own business, and they're not on the list, feel free to chat us here. We're really curious. We're going to talk about integrations in just a few seconds. So it's always great to know what Xero users are using, so that the teams at Method and Amica can actually build out integrations that meet your needs. So with that, I'm going to close it just because it does look like the majority of you guys have voted, and share those results. All right, so Outlook actually beating out Gmail. I wouldn't have guessed that, so that's really interesting to know. MailChimp's not too popular. Nice to see 9% of you guys are leveraging Zapier. That's a really powerful tool. And Google Calendar, also a favorite. So thanks so much for voting in the poll, everybody. And with that, we're going to actually talk about integrations and kind of their benefits. So Martin, let's start with you. What role would you say integrations have when it comes to Xero automation and really making the most out of it?
I mean, look, the benefit of integrations is so multifaceted. I think, initially where we started, it was very much just automating very repetitive and manual processes. And then from there, I think we've seen integrations evolve into much more than that. You know, it's become a lot more around the data, the flexibility of how you can use that data, the way that the same piece of data can be shared seamlessly, you know, not just from one app to another app, but one app to many apps. You know, you saw in the poll there that a lot of people are leveraging off different applications now. You know, reflecting on my time as an accountant, if I rewind the clock, you know, 15 years ago, I would say maybe we were using, you know, 4 or 5 different apps, if that. You know, and it was predominantly around the accounting packages and email, you know, and not much outside of that. But now, you know, the average business probably runs on a suite of, you know, let's say 10 to 15 apps easily, and potentially more, you know, if we're talking about integrations that sort of connect those systems together. So I think the data side of things, in terms of the flexibility and the control that users have over data and the way that they're able to wield it, whether they're sharing that with advisors or consultants that are enabling them to easily understand the value of that data and to generate some actionable insights out of it. One of the other really amazing things which I think integrations allow for now, which I'll touch on a bit later, is that you don't need to have any interaction directly with an accounting package now to influence data in an accounting package or to engage with that data in an accounting package. And that just means that you're empowering others within a business to influence business outcomes and interact with that accounting data without them having to necessarily log into it and deal with the UI and interface within a particular accounting package. And I think that's really great. I think that's going to continuously evolve. You know, whether it's something like engaging with a Slack or you know, even just with email, and that's having an outcome on what the data is doing within an accounting package. I think that's going to really gain some traction in the next couple of years. But yeah, you know, as I said, it's definitely evolved over time from just simple business automations and automating repetitive manual tasks.
That's great. Thanks, Martin. And Mamoon, what are your kind of thoughts here on the importance of integrations for Xero users?
Yeah, I think Martin summarized it pretty well. And I think just kind of like touching back on what I mentioned earlier, there's always going to be certain software that do certain parts of your business a little bit better. And the goal is not necessarily to have you replace every single thing you do with one system. It's to make sure that whatever systems you're using, that they're working cohesively together, and you're able to extend the power of your software so that you get all of the information that you need. It's accessible to as many people as possible, and you're not forced to kind of silo your teams and make them work independently of each other. Just kind of expanding on some of like the capabilities of Method, for example, our Gmail and Outlook gadgets, for example, a lot of, you know, your team, I'm sure, works basically from their inbox the entire day. And in the past, you know, what could happen potentially is your team is working from the inbox. There's a lot of good action items there. There's a lot of information there that they need to record. They're in their inbox and then they're leaving. They're going to their system. They're inputting in their data. They get an invoice. They, you know, get it. Then they go to their accounting software, put in the information there. There's a lot of unnecessary back and forth. For example, with Method, you live in your inbox. We live in your inbox. We have a Gmail and Outlook gadget plugin that directly you get an email. You want to log the interaction that you had with this customer. You can do it directly from your inbox. Similarly, we have a sync with the Google Calendar. So, for example, you want to set up a meeting with a customer. You create an activity in Method, and it shows up automatically on your Google Calendar. And then outside of kind of these individual areas, I would really you know, encourage everyone to kind of look at Zapier a little bit more and understand the power that automation tool has. It's a very simple tool. It's no code, drag and drop, and it really allows you to leverage all of the different software that you might potentially be using, and make sure that all of your automations are done in a way that your team is working cohesively and all of the information is where it needs to be.
Great, Mamoon. Next, we're going to turn our attention over to billing and invoice automation for Xero users. Martin, I know you have kind of some tips here. Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, of course. So billing and invoicing automations, typically these encompass sharing billing and invoicing information that you have already input into Xero or has already been input into Xero with other applications. At Amica, we have an app called InView, which it's a really nice light touch, simple integration insofar as the way that it works. So effectively what it does is it will pull invoices and bills out of Xero and insert these as reminders into your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar, or as part of your Slack daily digest. So what we're trying to achieve here, again, as I touched on earlier, is that we want people to be able to have access to accounting information and to be able to act on that accounting information and really influence business outcomes without necessarily having to log into the accounting system and or even understand really, you know, the data that's in there. So for business owners who are incredibly busy, this is something which really suits them well. You know, like a lot of the times, business owners will send invoices out or they'll receive bills and they're just busy doing the day-to-day. They're, you know, living in their emails or doing the majority of their work in emails, and you know, calendar as an extension of that. If they're getting reminders about upcoming bills or upcoming invoices or even overdue invoices, it's a nice way for them to just very easily and efficiently be reminded of those things and then, you know, act on it, whether it's call a client or make that payment to the supplier to make sure that it's not paid, they're not paid late. The other benefit of this is that for business, for bookkeepers and accountants who are supporting business owners, it's a nice little engagement tool. You know, a lot of the times now we see the role of bookkeepers and accountants changing slightly, where, you know, they're kind of acting outside of the more traditional, you know, we do compliance work or we do some data entry work. So I know with a lot of bookkeepers, they get a lot of value out of an app like InView, because if they're getting reminders in their calendar about significant events like due dates for large invoices, let's say, from an application, they can use that as an engagement piece with their client and say, hey, and just giving you a reminder, you've got this large invoice coming up that's due to be paid. You might want to give your customer a heads up. And you know, this I think really resonates with that theme of the data is there. How can we present it to people in a multitude of different ways? How can they interact with it and interface with it through different business processes, which they might already be doing? You know, everyone's on their email every day. Everyone's checking their calendar every morning. This is just part of that, you know, daily kind of business ritual that happens anyway. So it kind of makes sense to try to push some other information there that is efficient for them to digest and then act on. And so within the calendar items that we create, there's a link back to the invoice. So if, you know, you're the business owner or you're the bookkeeper or accountant, you can click that. It'll redirect you to a copy of the invoice, so you know exactly what the content of those bills or invoices are. And again, it's a really light touch, efficient automation that I think, you know, really helps, one, with engagement, but two, you know, billing and invoicing is, you know, it's like the lifeblood of the business because it leads to cash flow, right? So it's one of those things where if that part of the business is operating inefficiently, it can be really detrimental. So it's one of those things where I think it's good to have multiple people on top of what's happening in that regard.
Yeah, I know I personally live in Slack, so anytime, you know, an app can integrate with it, I'm like, that's such a win for me. Can't agree more. And we have a question here just from Charlotte around what is Slack. So Slack's kind of like this cool business instant messenger type tool. So it's really handy for chatting with internal folks. They released a feature recently, maybe a few months back, where you can add in, you know, external stakeholders if you're working with consultants, or maybe you're a bookkeeper yourself, like doing freelance kind of work for different companies. So definitely recommend checking that out. All right, with that, we're going to move into our next poll. So let me just get that launched here. All right, so this poll is multi-select, so you can select as many kind of options that apply to you. And the question that we're asking you all today is, which of these kind of documents do you create regularly? So first one we got up here is estimates or quotes. Second is invoices. The third is just various business reports. And the fourth is contracts. So please fill out the poll, especially if you're a CPE or looking to get CPE and you registered through CPA Academy. Please make sure to get your vote in. Looks like most of you guys have voted, so I'm just gonna give it a few more seconds for anyone who hasn't voted yet. So I'll just leave the poll open for maybe another 5 to 10 seconds, and then we will share the results. All right, and with that, I'm just gonna close the poll and share those results. All right, so it looks like invoices and reports are kind of the big ones that everyone's kind of doing on the daily, and then estimates / quotes as well as contracts are not as popular, but still a third of you roughly are regularly creating them. So that's great. Thanks for sharing. And Mamoon, I know you also have some tips around billing and invoice automation for Xero users. Do you mind filling this in?
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of talk about what Xero has available already that you can take advantage of. That'll help with this, and then kind of what you can do with Method to kind of extend those functionalities. So I know billing, invoices, all of those things, especially for a small business, it's a very draining part of the process. It's draining not only physically because you're creating a lot of potentially invoices and billing people a lot of things manually, but this is also something that's not a fun part of the job, asking people for payment. So there's a lot of ways you can automate this and make this a more efficient process directly within Xero. So one would be batch invoicing. So Xero has a lot of good capabilities to do a lot of things in batch. One of these would be obviously batch emailing. So you can go to your Xero list, select as many invoices as you want, and email them out. And that creates like a much faster process for you instead of having to go to emails individually and or invoices individually and trying to email them out, or potentially trying to personalize every single email and sending them out manually from the inbox. So that's one advantage. The other is creating repeating invoices. Again, another benefit of kind of reducing your manual entry. So if you're some sort of maybe potentially subscription-based business where you're going to be taking an invoice, or you have an invoice that's going to be due for this customer in a sort of pattern, it's going to be due on monthly on this date every time. Xero has a lot of options to allow you to create repeating invoices without too much work. The other thing would be follow-up reminders for late payments. So Xero is very flexible and gives you a lot of configurations or options on when to send emails for reminders. So they allow you to send up to 5 reminders for either overdue invoices or invoices that are about to be overdue. So you could set up some sort of process where you're emailing someone 3 to 4 days beforehand, and then maybe a week after, and then like a month after, whatever it is. And this kind of really automates the process instead of you having to chase everyone down individually all the time about those late sort of payments. In terms of what Method can do to extend this functionality, Method has a lot of the same capabilities. You can customize it to essentially send up follow-up reminders as much as you want, however you want. So you're not limited to the up to 5 reminders that kind of you're kind of grouped into with Xero. Is one of the benefits. 2 is that we offer very personalized email templates, so you can really personalize how you want this reminder to look and what it should say according to your clientele and what you prefer. And then 3, you can kind of do what Martin touched on earlier, which is where you're sending yourself a reminder to follow up with someone. So I know a lot of people, especially depending on your client base, don't like to send out automated messages. They like to be involved and have that personal touch, especially when it comes to something that is potentially more sensitive, like a payment. So you can create reminders for yourself to be like, hey, follow up with this person. Their payment is about to be, overdue, and that can be all automated. So you can have a process that runs that say, hey, if someone is, 3 or 4 or 5 days overdue, send me a reminder to follow up with them. So this is kind of just things that are already available to you with Xero, but also options you have to kind of extend on that functionality and make it, more cohesive with your business.
Thanks, Mamoon. I think I read a stat the other day that said something like the average American small business has something like $60,000 in outstanding payments on any given kind of time of the month. So it's definitely handy to automate those follow-ups to make sure you get paid. So thanks for those tips. All right, next we're going to talk about workflow approval automation for Xero users. Mamoon, do you want to kick things off?
Yeah, for sure. With Method, especially one thing we've noticed as we kind of transition from QuickBooks to more in the Xero space is that the approval process is a lot more important or a lot more prominent in this accounting software. This is something we really kind of want to take advantage of and highlight with what Method can do. So one of the most important things, or one of the biggest configurations we've built out, is a process of allowing customers to self-serve and allowing these transactions to follow through the natural approval process easily. So one example of this is using our online self-service portal. So what you can do is you can customize Method to capture e-signatures for estimates. And from there, what that'll do is if someone goes on their self-service portal and they see an estimate, they can accept or reject that estimate. And from there, if they sign the document, if they sign the estimate, decide that they've accepted accepted the estimate, what Method does is it automatically sends a notification to the internal user saying that someone has accepted the estimate. And from there, you have a variety of options depending on your workflow, what you want to do. A lot of people, what they'll end up doing is, this person has approved this estimate, it automatically turns into an invoice, and from there, you can automatically collect payments as well. So Method has a lot of capabilities that, depending on how much flexibility and how much automation you want with your workflow, you can really customize it to kind of take you through that entire process of quote to eventual collection of payment state.
Great, thanks, Mamoon. And Martin, I know you have some tips around e-signature capture as well for Xero users. Do you mind filling us in?
Yeah, so just extending on some of the work that Mamoon mentioned. So Xero, it has a great functionality and features around the status of different items, whether it's purchase orders, quotes, bills, invoices. And through the integration that we have with DocuSign, we can actually pick up on those statuses. So let's say you've issued a bill, or you generated a bill and it's got a waiting for approval status. We can pick that up and push that into DocuSign and send it to the relevant person to sign off for approval. Another use case, similarly to what Mamoon said, is that if you're sending estimates to customers, you don't want to necessarily have to chase them up via email or manually attach these things through email. You want to have a nice, efficient process which eliminates a lot of that. So that's another great application for basically having an approval workflow attached to, whether it's invoicing or billing or whatever it might be. In terms of the way that our integration functions, we're able to pull Xero users, Xero contacts, DocuSign contact groups as well, so that depending on the type of document, you can basically direct it to the right people or the right groups of people. And the really great thing, DocuSign, if you guys haven't used DocuSign, is really amazing for e-signatures and workflows around e-signatures. But in terms of the actual documents that DocuSign produces, they all get attached to the actual Xero transactions themselves. So they're always there as a point of reference that you can see really easily. I think this is another good example of, you have a workflow that happens around the business. It has a relationship with the accounting information, but people don't necessarily have to engage with Xero in this way. Like if a manager is seeing a bill, it's like, hey, we've received this bill. Do you approve it to be formally approved in the system and then processed for payment? This stuff is really important to do efficiently and not get bogged down by it. A lot of these things, particularly when it comes to accounting information, as organizations get bigger, as the volume of information gets bigger, it can be a bit overwhelming for, let's say, just the bookkeeper or the accountant to be vetting a lot of these things, because a lot of the times, you know, I've seen where invoices might be approved or bills might be approved, but really it needs like a direct manager or someone that's managing that relationship with the customer or the supplier to sign off on these things. So it's really great. It's really great to enhance some of the checks and balances that need to take place within the accounting system.
All right, found my unmute button there. Thanks, Martin. All right, so moving on, Mamoon, I know you touched about kind of what's possible a little bit with portals within Method. Do you want to maybe share a little bit more regarding payment automation as well as just like automation of general customer service workflows?
Yeah, no, for sure. So Method has like a pretty powerful online self-service portal. And again, the benefit of the self-service portal is a lot of the times pretty evident in terms of you're not chasing people down to collect payments or, you know, follow up with them or anything like that. So what Method allows you to do is collect payments directly from customers through the portal. So what you can do is we have access to Shuttle, so you can connect the payment gateway of your choice. And then customers can go on the portal, they can see kind of what they owe the business. And from there, they can make payments directly without you really having to do too much work. And as customers become more self-sufficient, it takes a lot of the burden off of you to be doing those manual tasks like, you know, chasing down people for payments or kind of emailing things out. So that's one of the benefits. Outside of that, we can extend the functionality of this to create something like recurring payments. So a common customization that happens, especially for subscription-based businesses or for, you know, not-for-profits, any sort of scenario where you know that you're going to be taking the same amount of money, you know, in a specific pattern, is that we can automatically take those payments. So what happens is essentially the customer will go online, they'll kind of like subscribe to some sort of plan. We'll create the invoices and automatically take the payments based on whatever the pattern is, so monthly, quarterly, whatever it is. So there's a lot of, you know, powerful automations there that don't necessarily need any input from you outside of, you know, the initial connections. You initially set up the payment gateway, and it just becomes a way for customers to be able to kind of empower themselves and understand really where they stand, what they need to do. And fully extend the power of, you know, self-service and automation.
Thanks, Moon. And I know you're going to give us a little sneak preview into the work that you and your team have kind of been doing. So just going to pass the presenter mode to you. Let me just pull that up. All right. Take it away, Mamoon.
Okay. Sorry. Do you see my screen?
Just the Google Doc outline.
Let's see.
Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. I know sometimes live demos don't always go to plan, but Mamoon is an expert. All right, now we can see your method screen.
Cool. So I'm going to kind of walk you through one of the processes I talked about before, essentially in terms of estimate to invoice process and how you can really automate that without, you know, having to do too much manual work. So just kind of going through it quickly. You're in Method. You're creating an estimate for a customer. So create a estimate for this customer. I'm kind of going through, I'm giving it a reference number so I can reference it later. Let's say we want to do some skate cleaning with this person. And, you know, $20, I'm sending over this estimate to this person, asking if it's going to be okay. So I click email here. You get a little preview of the estimate, essentially, and you send this over to them. In their inbox, they'll get an email, essentially notifying them that they've received an estimate. So I'll show you a quick look at what that looks like.
Just while we wait for things to kind of load, if you have any questions, feel free to chat us. We're going to be moving into our formal Q&A soon. So yeah, we'll have Martin and Mamoon kind of answering any questions you guys have.
So the customer will receive something like this. So essentially, it'll tell them their estimate is ready, kind of what the amount due is, and who it's for. And then from there, they can either download a PDF copy of it, or they can view the estimate in their portal, which is what I'm going to do. So here, the portal is loading up. And they get taken to the estimate, and you'll notice a few interesting things on the estimate. So essentially, all of the information is there for the estimate, what the item was, what the quantity is, what the amount is. And then from here, we have e-signature capabilities. And what you can do is you can add a signature. So essentially, you can't accept the estimate until you've signed it. So you can do a full name, or you can draw it out. I'll give you a little sneak peek of my drawing capabilities, which are not great. I added the signature. I've accepted the estimate. Okay. And then from here, what you'll get is the internal person will receive an email notification that the estimate was accepted.
And we're still looking at your portal screen, right, Mamoon?
Yeah. Just pulling up my email. So here, the person who is assigned to this estimate will get an approval message that kind of says what was approved, who approved it, and when they approved it. And then from there, if you go back into method and take a look at the estimate, you'll notice a few things. One is the estimate itself here. The status is updated. It's now been invoiced. What actually happened when you ended up accepting that estimate was that it automatically also created an invoice for you. So this is kind of just a sneak peek at the power of potential what you can do with method customization. You can kind of take a process that would generally involve a lot of back and forth. So you're emailing out the estimate, you're talking to them, you're understanding whether they've accepted or rejected it, and from there, once they've done that, then you're manually creating an invoice, whatever it is. And from here, it's really just you create the estimate, and then everything almost takes care of itself. You can extend this functionality a little bit further. So if you have like a payment processor attached, you can also automatically create the invoice and then collect payment on that invoice as well.
Great, thanks, Mamoon. I'm just going to switch the presenter back here to Laura. Big shout out for Laura for doing the slides for us throughout the webinar. She's kind of been on the back end, so very thankful for her help. All right, and with that, we're going to just wrap up really quick before I move into the Q&A. So Mamoon, can you just tell us a little bit, beyond your demo, obviously, just kind of a summary of how Method helps extend the power of Xero with automation?
Yeah, so just kind of the same points I was touching on earlier. So Method is really something that allows you to get full context of your sales cycle. So Xero is great for managing your accounting workflow, but it's not going to do a lot more outside of that. This is where you can take something like Method, a CRM, and kind of build a full picture of who your customers are, what they've done in the past, and what you can do with them in the future. And this not only helps you build the full picture, but also helps you kind of provide very personalized service and makes your customers feel like they're not a number, they're really, someone that are unique and special to you. So outside of that, we're also, very good with automations and ensuring that every business has what they need to account for their individual workflow. So each business is unique, and there are going to be a lot of different things, a lot of different workflows that are specific to each business. So we don't want to build a generic application. We want to make sure that whatever we build can be catered to the individual needs of whoever needs it. So again, if you're looking to automate from start to finish, that's where Method comes in. You're going to get a lot of out-of-the-box functionalities that'll help with workflow automation and make your workflow automation very powerful. But outside of that, you can also configure and customize it. We have a free 30-day trial at method.me. So if you guys want to try it out, see what it can do for you, feel free to visit the site.
Thanks, Mamoon. And Martin, I know you're gonna cover just how exactly like Amica helps Xero users when it comes to automation. So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, so Amica, obviously we have a large suite of integrations with point of sale and e-commerce providers. You can head over to our website to check it out. We also have some other business automations there as well. DocuSign, as I touched on, in particular, is a great one, as well as InView. In relation to other things that Amica also does, we also automate reporting for businesses. So any of those systems that we work with and that you can connect to your accounting package, we can actually generate reports and deliver them to whoever you want within your business, so that everyone's across, important business information. We also have an amazing mobile app called FitBiz as well, which is a nice way for business owners to keep up to date with their business information when they're on the go. So similarly to, if they're checking their health stats, they can check the health stats of their business through their mobile app. So that's really great. In terms of who we service, we work very closely with business owners directly. We try to make our products as easy and approachable as possible so that you don't necessarily need to be a bookkeeper or an accountant to set some of these things up. But if you are a bookkeeper or an accountant, these products are really great for engaging with your clients in different ways, but also obviously saving a lot of time when it comes to seamlessly sharing some of this information across different platforms. Again, all of our products are fully supported. I think that's always a really important thing whenever you're assessing integrations. I know you guys at Method have an amazing support team too. We made sure that our support team, and it's a complex task that they're really given, because they actually, when they're supporting these products, it's not just, let's say, the point of sale system or the e-commerce system that they have to be knowledgeable in. It's also Xero and the workflows and processes that happen around that. So, a lot of these guys, they're CPAs by trade. They're all Xero certified. They can really add a lot of value in terms of the way that these products are set up and are implemented, and make sure that they work specifically to meet each business's needs. So yeah, go to the website, check out who we work with. I'm sure there'll be some apps that our listeners will have that we have some solutions for.
Great, thanks, Martin. And with that, we are going to move into formal Q&A. The first question we have here is from Charlotte. I believe this is directed at Amica, but Charlotte, correct me if I'm wrong. Charlotte is wondering if Amica integrates with Sage or Drake.
We do have integrations with Sage, yes. Not Drake though yet.
All good. Stay tuned, Charlotte, maybe in the future. Awesome. And another question here from Charlotte, wondering if anyone on the panel has any recommendations for a good system to combine everything from appointments to invoicing and payments. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, on the Square side of things, Square's always developing and adding new functionality to their system. I know many businesses that use, in particular, Square appointments. For if you're a hairdresser or consulting firm or some other business that has appointments, Square's got some good solutions there, and they've got a lot of functionality attached to that product. Like you can have debit cards, you can do online invoicing. And that's an integration that works really well that we have with Xero. So I'd probably check out Square. It's a nice, easy product to use and set up as well.
Great, thanks, Martin. And one last kind of follow-up question here from Charlotte. They're wondering if Xero is good for sole owners looking to track payments and invoices. Any thoughts?
Mamoon, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, for sure. No, I'd say in terms of sole owners, Xero is probably one of the best ones out there. They're really targeted towards smaller and more medium-sized businesses. So they're going to give you a lot of the good functionality that you need to track invoices and anything else that you need, but it's not necessarily going to be a larger software that's more targeted towards enterprise. So if you are a smaller business or like a sole proprietorship, Xero is probably one of the better options out there in terms of accounting softwares.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the great thing with Xero is that it's very approachable software. I think you know, in terms of all of the accounting packages, they put a lot of effort into making it very easy to understand and intuitive.
Yeah, and outside of that, just one more thing that off the top of my head, like in speaking with Xero users in the past, like one of the biggest benefits to them was that Xero was, you know, really cared individually about providing proper support and things like that, which, you know, necessarily you're not always going to get. So as you're kind of getting up and running, Xero is like a software that really cares about ensuring that they're offering you the proper support and answering all of the questions that you need to get you going.
Great, thanks guys. And next question here is from Kyle. I'm going to direct it to Martin. They're wondering, how much does the Amica accounting integration cost?
Yeah, so it depends on the application that you're connecting the systems with. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we do have freemium plans for both Shopify and Square as an example. It's only where you're really heavily customizing those integrations, and there's a lot more complexity on our side to handle insofar as those connections are concerned, you know, where you start to have to pay for the service, let's say. So yeah, again, most of our integrations, we have freemium plans. That tends to satisfy, you know, the vast majority of users' needs, particularly when we're talking about smaller business owners. And then beyond that, you know, typically our pricing plans are, you know, if you're paying on a monthly basis, it'll be $17.99, and if you're paying annually upfront, it'll be $12.99. But yeah, typically, as I said, most people will be fine with a freemium pricing plan if they're just talking about managing an integration, you know, just for their own business.
All right, awesome. And one final question here from Taylor. They're wondering if the Amica team can help me with the setup process.
Yeah, absolutely. So generally with our integrations, we have 3 sort of user journeys insofar as setup is concerned. The first being an express setup, which basically, like, we will make all the decisions on your behalf about how an integration should be configured. That's like the lightest, easiest approach. Next is kind of like full customization, where, you know, we would recommend that a bookkeeper or an accountant do that, because they would understand how to map all of the various transactions into the chart of accounts within Xero. But then if you're either a business owner or you're a bookkeeper or an accountant, and either you're just completely lost in the process, or you just like someone to take you through it just to know that it's being done correctly, we have what's called a guided setup process, where essentially, you know, you book in a time with one of our integration specialists. They will get feedback from you in relation to what you're trying to achieve out of the integration. They'll have an appreciation for your existing chart of accounts, and they'll set things up accordingly. So they'll really hold your hand through that process and make sure that the integration is set up to meet your needs and that it's successful.
Great, thank you. And we just came up to the hour mark here. So that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you again to everyone who tuned in. Huge shout out to Martin and Mamoon for their really insightful answers. And big thank you again to Laura for doing the slides for us today. Really appreciate it. All right, guys, so until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.